Are distributed companies endangered from getting their source code stolen from their employees? So I get that occasionally, every now and then, from people who say, oh, it's really dangerous working with a distributed company or with a company that's located elsewhere and so on, because the code is going to get stolen and this is going to entirely kill the entire business. Now, there are very few instances where this can be legit. And those instances usually fall on specific terms or specific kind of conditions, such as bioengineering or some exclusive R&D deals from laboratories and universities, and basically companies with no specific business acumen, and companies who invest a lot more in R&D and in discoveries and kind of new bleeding edge tech and new algorithms and new, a cure cancer type of solution than any other business out there. What am I talking about? If you think about it, let's think about, let's say, publishers. Like, there are tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of publishers out there, blogs and magazines and different types of sources that publish some sort of media. And if you think about it, almost like probably 97% or so are running on top of WordPress. So WordPress is open source. So what's the big fuss, right? Like, we still have lots of publishers because the core, the essentials, the entity of a business is actually creating and publishing content and promoting it and finding the right people who are capable enough to produce that content and write it and publish it and kind of shape it in a way that relates to their target audience and things like that. So by itself, the technology doesn't really matter a lot. And like, most people are already using different flavors of open source in their kind of day-to-day. And like, even if you don't think about publishers, because that's kind of trivial in the sense of, all of the readers are visitors, or at least almost all of them. It's kind of a straightforward scenario. Even if you think about e-commerce, like how many, let's say you want to purchase a laptop. How many e-commerce stores, in your opinion, are selling a MacBook or a Lenovo notebook or a Samsung notebook or something else, or a Pixel book? Like, probably thousands, if not tens of thousands. But who cares? Like, people use e-commerce stores for different reasons. Like, sometimes they just see a good opportunity or a discount, or know someone who's selling that, like someone who's running the business or the e-commerce itself, or like they see them at conferences or at events, or they know the brand from somewhere else, like the e-commerce is part of a broader business, a bigger one, or they can combine it with different services or stuff, or they have watched YouTube reviews of the products and that's how they decided to buy it from that store, and so on. Like, even in that case, there are lots of e-commerce businesses who survive online simply because people can buy from different places, and the fact that the e-commerce technology itself, it's there. Most of the time it's also open source. Again, it's WooCommerce or Shopify, it's not open source, but again, it's freely available, or Shopify or Magento or something else. Like, technology is there, but it's all about the core of the business. So that's why stealing the source code is not as important, because let's think about it. Like, you have a company that's building a product, like, let's say a company like Google or like Apple or like something else. Now, we do have lots of Chinese brands that are copying iPhones, right? They launch something that looks in a fairly similar way. Sometimes it runs Android, sometimes it runs some freaking clone of iOS and whatnot, but the vast majority of the people don't buy that replica, even if it's 5 times cheaper than the original iPhone, simply because they can buy the original product, because they enjoy, they're fans of the brand, they have been supporting the brand for a while, they believe in the innovations that Apple has allegedly been doing back in the day, and so on. So they're trusting the brand. They do believe in the foundations of the brand. They do believe in the value of the brand, in say Steve Jobs or Tim Cook or some of the other original, or Steve Wozniak or someone else who's been building that brand and product for years. They do remember the iPods of the world and the iPads and the first MacBooks and like everything else that has emerged of the history of the brand. It's not purely about the new technical gadget, because if you think of it, like let's say, for example, like iPhone for many years now is not the most advanced technological product out there. Like, there are even Chinese brands, like, I don't know specific examples, but let's say MI or OnePlus or some others that are releasing hardware, with better capacities, with better, let's say, cameras, with more RAM, with better CPUs and so on. But that doesn't mean that people are automatically jumping on that ship and just saying, well, you know, this has better tech, so that's why I'm buying it. Most people are buying based on perception, based on emotion, based on the brand. And again, that's purely from consumer standpoint perspective for specific products. But like, again, even if you're building a business, let's say you want to clone Uber, right? So lots of people have tried to clone Uber and they wanted to do their own company, like shipping people across the city or whatever it is. Like, very few has ever succeeded. Lyft is one of the top competitors of Uber, and they were pretty much the second one right after Uber that have started and have worked hard and tried to recruit drivers and riders and try to leverage all of the kind of bad PR that Uber received over the years in order to become a successful competitor of Uber and to be more or less an equivalent competitor of Uber as well. But again, lots of people can just buy a similar Uber-like solution for probably $500 from freelancer.com. That doesn't mean that they can start a business, because running a business like Uber, it requires lots of legal hoops, it requires lots of marketing and onboarding for drivers and trying to make assessments and try to set some regulations and rules for making a legitimate brand. And you know, a legitimate business model, and then start with some of those and then recruit people who can start working and give them free credit, and this free credit is being paid to the driver so that they have the incentive to start. You know, there's a lot more that goes into building that. So again, whatever example you take, like be it Google or Apple or I don't know, Netflix or something else, whatever example you have, the business model has a lot more to do than the source code itself. Again, Netflix, you know, Netflix, they're launching their own TV shows and their own movies, right? Even if you bring the Netflix technology, which is actually quite brilliant, and they have lots of innovations and they have some of the most expensive engineers out there. So even if you get the technology itself, who cares? You don't have the copyrights of the movies. You can't launch new movies. You don't have contracts with specific actors and publishing houses and producers and like everyone else in the publishing industry in LA and pretty much everywhere else. So what I'm trying to allude to is working with a remote company may have some dangers, more or less, one way or another, and that's fine. But blaming or kind of being afraid that someone's going to steal the source code is ridiculous, because the core, the essential of every business may be heavily dependent on source code, in a sense that the business cannot run without technology, and technology has to be good, and technology has to support the business needs and has to solve the business problems. All of that is true, I assure you, most of the time. But that doesn't mean that if someone magically gets the very same clone of that same technology, they can just bootstrap an entire successful business, because they don't have your staff. They can't automatically keep scaling and keep enhancing and improving that technology on your own, right? They don't have that. They don't have the business knowledge. Sometimes they don't have patents or intellectual property. Sometimes you have you know, contracts with specific partners and vendors and somewhere else who's in charge. You know, you have lots of competitive leverage to use, be it networking, business experience, portfolio, connections, staff, recruitment, location, anything that helps you scale and that makes your business successful. And again, technology is one of those things, but it never is the holy grail of everything. Again, you may need technology, but the fact that someone else magically, you know, has a copy of your source code by its own doesn't make this a dangerous situation, even though it's a hypothetical situation and in practice it has almost never happened in the first place. So that's pretty much it. If you have any concerns about, you know, working with remote teams or remote staff or whatever, let me know here in the comments, and I'd be happy to share my experience with leading a distributed agency with 40 people right now, and let you know some of the, you know, challenges that we've been facing over the past 9 years on the market.